Hi, it is Mikefield here. Welcome to my tier list for Butcher's, Circus and Darkest Dungeon. If you do enjoy watching this video, remember to like it and subscribe. Let's get going with the tier list right now. I'll just minimize the cam and we can get started with characterizing those. So the first idea here for me is that I'm creating a tier list which is based on versatility. Because your task in Butcher's Circus is to win as many games as possible against as many potential team compositions. So we have actually talked about this a lot on my stream, and we have kind of discussed it with a lot of people who are very high ranked in Darkest Dungeons, Butcher Circus. So they are champion, they are darkest rank, and this is a kind of a tier list that we have come up together. And we kind of had to make certain arrangements there. So this is mostly something that people agreed upon. But you have to remember this is my own bias. I am currently ranked champion 2, which is kind of okay, I guess. It's quite high. I've played a lot of different compositions for stress. I've played a mark composition. I've played a combo composition so far. So I kind of know more or less what I'm talking about. I've also played against a lot of opponents, right? I've played about 80-90 games on the ladder, so I have more or less a good idea of what the meta is. So let's get started with setting those characters up. We'll go from the top to the bottom. So we'll start with the S tier, which is the strongest characters, which I believe are just the cores of different team compositions and which I think are very, very versatile and very strong. So we would say that S tier is in my opinion, anyway, slightly overpowered. Okay, we'll take our shouting man here, because Man at Arms, with his ability to basically carry the stress compositions through all those fights, is just indispensable. Basically every single stress composition will be running Man at Arms, or most of those will, and he's just extremely strong with dealing stress damage, with controlling how the combat goes, with preventing stress damage to happening to your own team, adding you accuracy, and actually reducing the damage that your opponents can deal to you. So he's extremely flexible, he has a guard ability as well, he's super tanky, so he's just a core, I think anyway, he's a core of most of the stress comps. And this is why he is definitely gonna be S tier. Another character that I think is S tier is the Bounty Hunter. He is also extremely versatile. He's on the other edge of the spectrum, so he is mostly a mark composition guy, but he fits with so many other comps. This is because he has the ability to basically reliably execute every opponent. So if you bring someone to Death's Door, your Bounty Hunter will have a 100% chance to just one-shot that character, obviously unless they dodge or they have some extra Death's Door resistance. He has like the most reliable ability to execute your enemies, and this means, and also you can do this from rows 1 to 3, so from the very first front row to the third row, and he can also execute those very first 3 rows. Okay, he also has a lot of additional utility, so if you have the particular trinket, it will allow you to execute your opponents with caltrops as well, which is basically an AoE ability, that hits everybody and does damage. So this basically can one-shot characters who are guarded. This can execute characters who would otherwise be unreachable to that character, to your bounty hunter. So he's extremely versatile, and also caltrops actually do a lot of bleed damage. So they do basically 2 bleed damage for the duration of the entire fight. So this makes this character extremely potent. And obviously he has the ability to hook his enemies with the ability Come Hither as well. He can mark, right? So he has quite a lot of different tools at his disposal. He can execute on the mark as well. So he has a lot of stuff that he does. And he doesn't have to be in a mark composition to shine. He can be in a damage composition, like damage over time composition, that just brings enemies to low HP quickly. Or on a burst composition with a Jester or with a Leper, or with a bounty, or with the grave robber as well, right? Those characters that have very high burst damage, and he can just basically execute on all mistakes that their enemies make. So this is the second character, and the third S tier character is definitely our boy Abomination. He's my personal favorite, and he fits into every single composition you can imagine, because he is very good at moving enemies. He has a stun, he has he can apply horror, he can apply a lot of stress, he has counter, he has extremely good ranges on all his abilities as well. He has self-healing. Like, basically he does everything very well, right? He has very good items as well. He's very tanky, and he's only he basically has an issue, because the only issue when he's pushed to the very back row in combat. This is the only situation when he's actually in trouble. From all other rows, he can execute most of his basic actions. And this actually applies to the man-at-arms as well. He's very good from every single position. So no matter where you push the man-at-arms, he is going to be useful anyway. For the bounty hunter, it's going to be a little bit different. He has to be from positions from 1 to 3, as I've said, right? So that might kind of take away from his strength. And this basically closes our tier list for the S tier. And now we're going to move to tier A+, which contains characters which are, slightly below overpowered. So I think they're just exactly as balanced as a character should be, maybe a little bit stronger. And they are also extremely versatile and provide a lot of utility. So first of all, the Arbalest goes into A+. She has extremely good itemization possibilities with the item that allows her to bypass guard, for instance. She has extremely high damage against marked targets, which means she can basically bring any character from 100 to 0 with a crit. Her kit allows her to heal, remove bleeding, and basically she's just an improved version of the Musketeer. Because of the items she has, she can just play way more roles, she's way more flexible, so I would definitely say the Arbalest is a slightly stronger version of the Musketeer, which naturally also drops the Musketeer to slightly lower tier. She has the bowler shot, which means she has she's a strong character from the second and first row as well, because it does a significant amount of damage. She can remove debuffs from your characters. She can cleanse stuns. This means that if you, like, 2 of your characters are stunned, she can save you 2 actions with the use of 1, which is also very good. So she's overall an extremely versatile fighter, and she can actually carry you through a lot of fights. So that's gonna be our first contender for A+. Another A+ character, in my opinion, is the Jester. I have never used him, but if you've played enough games on the ladder, you know how much pain in the ass he can be, because he has the unique ability to execute the character without the necessity of getting them to death's door before that. And he can stack the damage for the fight. He has a lot of useful abilities that do significant amounts of damage. He has a lot of dodge. He is, however, somewhat vulnerable to stuns and pushes, but he kind of makes up for this with extreme mobility, a lot of different utility skills, and generally speaking, a lot of damage. So he does a lot of stuff very well, which puts him in A+ tier without much doubt about this. As we said, the unique ability to actually execute enemies is definitely something that makes him stand out in the crowd. Houndmaster. Houndmaster has 2 different roles, so he can belong to a mark composition, in which he just does the damage on the marked targets, or he can belong to a stress composition, in which case he just does a lot of stress damage and applies bleeding, which basically creates some pressure on the enemies. Now, a Houndmaster has somewhat low accuracy, so you have to kind of account for that when you're choosing the trinkets for him, but he makes up for this with this full AoE attack that can hit from anywhere, from any rank you can choose. So basically, he's, I think, especially useful for the compositions that run stress, because he can apply AoE stress to all enemies. He can also crit, which gives you, additional stress applied as well, which means that he's an extremely potent character. And as I said, he can be put in any position you may want and still work. As far as other skills he has a guard that also adds dodge. So if you're running a stress dodge composition, he can actually really make certain characters invulnerable to damage, because they'll just have, this incredibly high dodge percentage. He has a stun. He has a self heal as well, which also gives him regeneration. So overall, again, an extremely flexible fighter, especially recommended for the stress comps, I feel. So Houndmaster in the mark comps also is pretty good, but I think his major applications are actually in the stress compositions. So the guy does a lot of really good work. Now we have the 4th and final character for A+, which is the Occultist. The Occultist is actually, or was actually, my favorite character for the stress composition as well. Second favorite, because I love Abomination the most. But this is because he has this ability to do a lot of things in combat very well. First of all, he has the ability to pull the enemies towards himself. This means that, and this is a very strong skill, which is further amplified by the items he can wear, and you can basically do a lot of really significant disruption to the enemy ranks. So you can pull a character by 2 fields towards him, and also at the same time deal them a lot of horror. It's like, I know, 10 stress damage per round with appropriate items for 4 rounds, which is absolutely insane. He also has the ability to deal AoE horror with the Abyssal Artillery on the back 2 rows of the enemy formation, which basically allows you to stack a lot of stress over a very short duration of time. But basically by the 4th turn, if you're allowed to keep using the Abyssal Artillery, your enemies will be on very low both HP and very high stress. Abyssal Artillery once again can crit and do a lot of damage there, so he's extremely flexible in terms of what abilities he has. He also has 2 abilities which allow him to do very high stress damage to particular targets. He can mark, but I think there are better mark characters for the mark composition, so you don't have to take an Occultist there. He can also further empower your other characters, because he has the ability to make your stress characters invisible. I mean, he can make anybody invisible, right? But if he actually uses it on the stress characters, this increases the stress damage that they deal by about 50%, which is a huge bonus if you do this on, for instance, your Crusader or your Houndmaster. I think those 2 characters should be the major focus characters for the Occultist to make invisible. He has the healing as well, which is somewhat unreliable, but can really save, allow you to salvage some fights, because if you get a crit or very high healing, it basically heals a character to full HP. So he's, again, very versatile in what he can do, and that's why he lands in A+. Now we're moving on to A tier. And for A tier, I have a few characters here. We have the Shieldbreaker, who I personally really hate fighting against, because she's usually the last person standing in the fight. This is because of her extreme survivability, because you can stack dodge on her as well, up to even 50 dodge base, which is absolutely nuts. She can give herself Aegis, she can apply AoE Blight, she can disrupt the enemy formation. She is very versatile because she can basically use all her abilities wherever she stands. So, obviously a small exaggeration here, but you cannot just make her useless by pushing her backwards, right? This means that Shieldbreaker is extremely strong. She has very high survivability. Overall, she does decent amount of damage. She's this very strong disruptor, I would say, right? She kind of matches Abomination in some regards, but she just doesn't have the damage. And she doesn't have enough stress damage to also, I think, validate using her instead of the Abo. So she's a very strong character, and she does a serviceable amount of damage. I think she's just very versatile, and she can sometimes actually win you fights. I've had a lot of situations in which it was like 1v2 Shieldbreaker, who was basically owning me in the end, because she was just unkillable, untouchable, and very difficult to deal with. Her major weakness, and this also applies, by the way, to our boy Occultist and to our boy Jester, is the stun resistance, which is extremely low. But she can, and obviously Jester as well, these 2 guys definitely make up for this with very high dodge percentage chance, right? So this is basically what makes her stand out in the crowd. She just stays alive for a very long time. Okay, next character here is going to be the Highwayman. And I have mixed feelings about this guy. I've seen him used very successfully against stress compositions, because he basically goes and he can counter the Antiquarians, he can counter the Houndmasters with the Riposte. He does a very high amount of damage with the Riposte and with the basic attacks. And he can apply stress as well if you really need that, but there are obviously better characters for that, I feel. Generally speaking, however, he's just very strong. He can lunge, right, which also allows him to, he has the Jewel's Advance, which gives him the Riposte and does a lot of damage. So overall, a very strong, well-balanced character who can perform from any rank as well. So you can just disable him by moving him to a particular location, right? So overall, I feel he's very solid. He has very strong debuff resistance as well, which you might kind of, pay attention to. So overall, he just does a lot of stuff very well. I don't think he shines in any role, though. He is very strong Riposte character, but other than that, I wouldn't say he is exceptionally good at something, right? He's just this kind of solid, character. It can be a core of any composition. I don't think you need anything else from an A tier character, right? You definitely need to stick at least one of those A or B tier characters into your comp anyway, and I would say that taking him is definitely a good idea. Okay, next down the line is going to be the Grave Robber. And I'll start with the weaknesses as long as, because oh no, this is the Musketeer. Should I keep making mistake between these two, right? Okay, here. So here is the Grave Robber, and the thing about Grave Robber is that she is strange. It doesn't feel like she can do a lot to you. She has very low stun resistance. She cannot act from the first row as well, or she cannot do much from the first row. However, at the same time, if you actually play her very well, she can be an extremely destructive force for both the stress composition, for the damage over time compositions, and for burst compositions. Her invisibility gives her a huge burst to damage. If you use appropriate items on her, she can actually stack several buffs that allow her to destroy your team. So overall, I think she's very strong. It's just, she's very difficult to control, however I feel. So that's why she's A tier. She just takes a lot of practice, and if you make a mistake and she ends up somewhere you didn't want her to end up, she can get easily stunned and picked off. So that's the difficulty with her. She's very squishy. She can just die within a turn, no problem, even if they're not using Mark. Even if she doesn't get crit, she can just drop dead very quickly. I think she's like one of the squishiest characters. Like, she's definitely the easiest character for me to kill. I tend to focus her a lot. So that's gonna be our A tier. We are still not done. We have the Antiquarian here, which is the ultimate tilter for me, because I actually tried playing with her. I liked her on my team composition. I was using her for my stress composition that was based around dodging. But I feel like the RNG in this game can be brutal sometimes. Like, you can get so unlucky that you don't even feel the bonuses that her dodge provides. As far as her uses go, she has the AoE dodge buff that can be stacked several times, I think like up to 3 times, and then it gives you plus 30 dodge. She has the AoE Blight ability that also applies a decent amount of stress, so this can be used to slowly wear your opponents down and kill them with a bounty hunter or just with simple stress, because if you bring your enemy to death's door and give them 200 stress, they just simply die from heart attack. So she's overall a kind of this reliable, flexible fighter, very much unlike to what she was in the original DD, where she is just a loot bot. I think she deserves a slot in A. I just personally don't like her because I got shafted by the dodge really a lot on one day. I think I lost like 3 games in a row simply because even though everyone was very high on dodge, they just were not dodging. So she can be very annoying to play, but she can be extremely painful to play against because you can miss several attacks on your enemies. You can just miss, like, she can mess up every single plan your opponents may have. So she's this kind of hit and miss character. If you're ready to kind of, take a few losses simply because, you just get very unlucky with the dodges, feel free to pick her up. I think she's extremely strong, extremely versatile. Unless she gets pushed to the first or second, she can use the dodge. She can use a lot of abilities from first and second as well. So she's overall extremely powerful. She has the regen, so this kind of can sometimes keep you alive as well. I feel she's an alright character. Nothing special, but she's very good. And another favorite of mine, actually, the Crusader. And he's also a very versatile character. I would say that there are 2 uses he has. First of all, if you are running a stress composition, he can be your healer, stunner, and stress damage inflictor. So he has a lot of stress damage on his Zealous Accusation. He can hit the front row very effectively, and he's actually, like, I feel anyway, he's an improved. I'm gonna kind of talk about Hellion at the same time, who goes to B+. I think Crusader is overall this improved version of the Hellion, because not only does he do a lot of damage, he also has a stun in his kit. He has a heal, which is a 2-target heal. He has a stress heal if you want to use it. He has a lot of stuff. The Holy Lance, I think, is also a very strong damaging ability. So overall, I feel like he is just a slight notch above the Hellion. For the composition I'm running him in right now, because I'm running this Mark composition with the Crusader and with the Abo, he is used as the Disruptor. He has a significant amount of damage, even if they push him back in, just come ahead with the Holy Lance, do a shitload of damage, and if he's left untouched in the front 2 rows, he can stun and basically just disable one enemy for a turn. So overall I feel he's extremely potent. He has a lot of disruptive potential. He's very healthy, and his items are great because there is a blade that gives him 30% virtue chance, which actually happens quite. 30% is like 1 in 3 games which you play against stress, he will actually get virtue, which is obviously going to save your ass sometimes. So he's extremely strong. I would say that yes, he's one of the strongest characters overall. Like, he's one of the strongest core characters. I was actually considering putting him in A+ even, but overall I think there are certain characters that have a bit more versatility or a bit more oomph to them to be put over there. He's very well balanced fighter. You can find his place in basically every composition imaginable. So here we go. I think the A tier is already full. We can just move down to Hellion. Hellion is, I don't know what to say about her. I ran her a lot in my compositions, and she was very effective. But she's vulnerable to movement, right? You can easily push her. Obviously, this applies to the Crusader as well. But I feel like if you're running her or Crusader in the stress composition, she has way fewer uses because the Crusader can still heal from the bottom ranks. He can stress heal from the back ranks as well. Whereas the Hellion can just, rush forward, and if she doesn't get what she needs, like if she doesn't move forward, she can kind of get ping-ponged, and she doesn't quite accomplish anything if she's in the back. So if you keep the Hellion in the back, she's basically going to be virtually useless, because her breakthrough still stacks this minus damage, which Crusader doesn't do, and overall she's kind of ineffective. However, if you leave her unchecked in the front, she will inflict a massive amount of stress and a massive amount of accuracy penalties on your opponent. So I think she mostly works in the stress compositions, and she can actually disable a lot of characters. If you run if you run her in a dodge composition, it's an additional bonus, because in a dodge composition, a Hellion can actually cause your enemies to miss most of their attacks, right? Because if you stack like minus 30 accuracy and you have like about 50-60 dodge, a lot of abilities will just basically automatically miss, which is amazing, right? She's very strong if left unchecked. However, if your enemies are running some sort of push like an Abomination, she is going to kind of struggle. I would say she's just going to kind of struggle. So I'm not advising against using her. I'm just saying, well, there may be better choices for you. Alrighty, where are we now? Plague Doctor. Alright, we are also going to put, sorry, I have a tier list on the side, so I'm just kind of looking at my notes. We have the Plague Doctor here as well, and Plague Doctor is weird. I tend to murder him first. If you I think this is the same deal. He is very strong if you leave him to do his thing. So if you leave the Plague Doctor, I think he should be your priority. Like, if you leave a Plague Doctor to his own devices, he will destroy you. He will inflict massive amount of blight. He will inflict you with extraordinary amount of stress. If you're running he also works very well with the Antiquarian because he can debuff your accuracy. So overall, again, he's very, very powerful. So this basically means that if you just leave the Plague Doctor unchecked, he will just rain absolute terror across your team. However, he's very vulnerable to any sort of pulls and pushes. So if you pull him to the front and you kill him very quickly, he has very low HP. If you just focus him down, he will not do much in a fight, right? So you should always remember to focus him down if you're fighting against him, because if you just leave him to do his thing, I bet that you'll just regret it, because he just takes your backline from 100 to 0 within like 2 to 3 turns. He inflicts massive stress as well. He inflicts minus accuracy. So overall, you leave him to do his stuff, you're really screwed. If you kill him quickly, he's gonna be just useless. And he's very easy to focus, right? That's the problem. So if you underestimate him, you are in trouble. If you don't, you are probably golden. And we don't have too many characters left, really, right? We have the Musketeer and the Flatulent here in Tier B. Flatulent is extremely strong, but if, again, you don't understand how he works. If you bring him to 0 HP, he will heal his entire team. If you bring him to Heart Attack, he will actually also trigger a healing explosion. If you kill him, I think he also heals. So overall, I think the Flatulent should be just left to his own devices. However, if you just do it, he will also inflict massive amount of bleed damage. The idea here is that you probably want to keep him above 50% HP. I know this sounds a bit tricky, and push backwards. The idea behind this is that if you push him to the 4th position or to the 3rd position, he has nothing to do. So he can only use a healing skill, which is kind of mediocre when you think about it, and that's all that he has in his kit. He can take a mark on himself, but you can also actually just very easily kill him off. I don't think that he has enough flexibility to be a contender against some other characters who work within like the same realm of possibility. There are some very strong setups here. You can set him up with the item that gives him bonus blight damage on melee attacks, because both his AoE attacks that target the back row are actually counted as melee, so he can actually inflict both bleed and blight with the same set of attacks on 2 targets in the back row, which is extremely potent, obviously, but at the very same time, I think if you just push him, if you just control him a lot, he's going to be useless. You should probably consider, I mean, he can be okay if you take like exotic snuff for him. He kind of jumps to A tier, right? But not many people do this. So he's very easy to manipulate, push back. Obviously he has like 2 field movement, but every time you move, you just basically give up your turn. So I would say he is not very versatile, but he does some stuff very well, right? I would say he is not going to be absolutely useless, but he takes way more effort to play correctly, and it's very easy to just outmaneuver him. That's why he lands in the B position. Personally, I don't think I've lost like a single game against a Flatulent, so I'm just gonna put him here and let him rot. As far as the Musketeer goes, I know people will disagree with this. However, just take my word for this. This is very subjective. I just put him here because I never have trouble against him. I had one game. There was like one genius guy in my stream recently who actually played Flagellant very well with those items I have just discussed. But he is like the very first person to do this right. So I would generally speaking say Flagellant. If you don't take the movement resistance, you're useless. If you do take it, still there are probably going to be better characters for your position. Okay, so he's kind of this slightly underpowered guy here, who doesn't really do that much overall. I would say overall, like if you know how he works, it's very easy to play around him, right? You just need to learn how the Flagellant mechanics work, and then you're just going to be able to to some extent just ignore him, right, and just play around what he does. Another B tier character is the Musketeer, and this is not because she is shit, this is because she's just a worse, in terms of items, in terms of what she does, I think she's just a worse version of the Arbalest, and that's why she just goes to the B position. I think Arbalest just overall performs a bit better, and there's no reason to take the Musketeer over the Arbalest for basically any composition that runs Mark, so I don't think she deserves a spot anywhere up here. And now we're going to our lowest tier. And those 2 characters, I feel anyway, are those noob traps. The first character here is our Vestal, and the thing about healing in this game, and Butcher's Circus specifically, is that it's just kind of bad. I'm gonna say it's just kind of bad. Healing just doesn't do what it should be doing. So many characters have healing, basically, and in Butcher's Circus you don't need to fully heal your characters. Remember, so many characters just one-shot you anyway. And it's very easy for a stress composition to just get you to 0 HP by just basically giving you a heart attack. What really matters is to keep your character above 0 HP. And any character, like there are quite a few characters way above here that do the same thing. They can heal your allies and just be happy about this, but they do so much more than that. And the Vestal, outside of the healing, she only has a stun. And I would say this is just very underwhelming. She can clear horror, obviously, which is not terrible, but the Crusader can do that as well. She just doesn't do things as well as the others. Let's face it, she just doesn't do the things as well as the others do. So, I'm not saying she's absolute trash. I feel she's just very... Okay, no, she's trash. She's just trash. I'm saying that. Yeah, Vestal is garbage. She just gets outperformed very easily by other characters. And in this very same tier, we just get the Leper. And the thing about Leper is, he is very good at dealing damage. He can push your characters, but if you put him beyond the 2nd position, beyond the 2nd row, he is going to just struggle, right? If you push the Leper out, you're basically like, he's usually a core of your composition, if you have a Leper, right? And he has just too little utility to be worth taking. I feel like he just is outperformed by most of the characters. that you can see here in this table, and he just doesn't do enough. He's very easily outmaneuvered, he's easily outpaced in terms of damage. He's like probably the least flexible characters of the pack here. So even though like you might kind of like him for the, you know, for his uses in the regular vanilla Darkest Dungeon, in the PvP he just doesn't have what it takes to be at the top. So I just feel that this is all there is here. Many people agree, I think, as far as the leper goes, many people just agree that he just doesn't do enough to you know, to be worth taking on a team. You are obviously free to disagree. If you dislike this video, if you feel that I'm very, very wrong about something here, and you know, I don't know everything, so if I messed something up, let me know in the comments below. If you disagree with me, let me know. If you feel that, you know, some things in this tier list could be improved, like if you feel that, you know, some characters deserve more, also tell me in the comments. Now, if you did enjoy watching this video, please consider subscribing, because subs mean a lot to me. Basically, they just allow me to grow my channel, and you know, to create more Darkest Dungeon content, or you know, content on all the other games as well. Remember to leave me a like, remember to leave me a comment. I hope you enjoyed this tier list, and this is it from me today. So thank you for watching, and see you around. See you, people. Bye bye.